In 2014, a Silicon Valley startup was worth $9 billion. Its founder was the youngest self-made female billionaire on the planet. And the product that made her rich, a machine that could supposedly run hundreds of medical tests from a single drop of blood, did not work. Not worked poorly. Did not work. Behind the curtain at investor demos, the blood was quietly carried out of the room and run on a standard commercial analyzer you can buy off the shelf. $9 billion. For a magic trick. A 19-year-old who dropped out of Stanford and convinced Henry Kissinger, a four-star general, and some of the most powerful investors in America that she had reinvented medicine. A device named after Thomas Edison that produced results so wrong they could tell a healthy person they were dying. And a 26-year-old who tried to warn the world, and whose own grandfather sided with the company against him. Everyone knows this as a fraud story. The black turtlenecks. The unnaturally deep voice. The Steve Jobs cosplay. And sure, all of that happened. But the fraud is the easy answer, and the easy answer is wrong. It wasn't the marketing. It wasn't the theater. It wasn't even the lying exactly. There was one specific engineering decision, made at the very beginning, that guaranteed everything built on top of it would eventually collapse. And almost nobody talks about it. Elizabeth Holmes founded Theranos in 2003, at 19, after dropping out of Stanford's chemical engineering program. The pitch was genuinely beautiful. Holmes said she was afraid of needles, and she imagined a world where one tiny finger prick, a single drop of blood, could run every test a hospital lab could run. Cheaper. Faster. From a small device sitting in your neighborhood pharmacy. It was the kind of idea that sounds like the future, and the people who lined up behind it were not amateurs. The board of Theranos included former Secretary of State George Shultz, Henry Kissinger, future Defense Secretary James Mattis. Holmes raised more than $700 million. By 2014, the company was valued at $9 billion, and Holmes, who controlled roughly half of it, was worth around $4.5 billion on paper. Then, in 2013, Theranos signed the deal that would make all of it real, a partnership with Walgreens to put its blood testing centers directly inside stores. Real patients, real diagnoses, real blood. The future had arrived. Except the future had a problem nobody outside the building knew about. The device was called the Edison. And here is what the Edison was supposed to do. Take a few drops of blood from a finger stick and run hundreds of different diagnostic tests on that one tiny sample, automatically, inside a single small box. The problem is that this is closer to physics than to software. A drop of blood from a finger is not the same as blood drawn from a vein. It's contaminated with tissue fluid, and there is barely any of it. To run many different tests, real labs need real volume and many different machines. Theranos was promising to shrink all of that into one device, using a sample a fraction of the normal size. The Edison couldn't do it. By the company's own internal reality, the device could reliably run only a small handful of the tests it advertised. So Theranos did something extraordinary. To process the hundreds of tests they had promised Walgreens patients, they quietly bought commercial blood analyzers, machines made by Siemens, the German industrial giant, and ran the patient samples on those instead. The revolutionary device in the pharmacy was, for most tests, a prop. The real work was happening on the same equipment every other lab on Earth already used. And here's the part that should make you wince. Because finger prick samples were too small for the Siemens machines, technicians diluted them with saline, which made the results even less reliable. They had broken the test twice to hide the fact that the test never worked once. Running real patient blood on secretly modified machines is not a marketing problem. It is a public health bomb. Patients were getting results for potassium levels, for blood clotting, for cancer markers, and the numbers were wrong. Some women were told they might be losing a pregnancy. Some patients got false readings frightening enough to send them to the emergency room. Inside the company, people knew. One of them was Tyler Schultz, a young employee, and the grandson of board member George Schultz. Tyler raised his concerns internally, got nowhere, and finally went to regulators and to a reporter. His reward? His own grandfather sided with Theranos. Tyler's family reportedly spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees defending him from the company's lawyers. He was 26 years old. The reporter Tyler went to was John Carreyrou of the Wall Street Journal. In October 2015, Carreyrou published the story that pulled the curtain all the way back. The Edison didn't work, and Theranos was secretly running tests on commercial machines. Theranos denied everything. Holmes went on national television and called the reporting flat out wrong. For a few months, it looked like the company might survive on reputation alone. It did not. Once regulators actually looked, the dam broke fast. Theranos voided or corrected roughly 1 million blood test results. 1 million. Real people, real diagnoses. Federal inspectors found the lab posed immediate jeopardy to patient health. Holmes was banned from operating a lab for 2 years. Walgreens ended the partnership and later sued. The $9 billion valuation went to zero almost overnight. In 2018, the SEC charged Holmes and the company's president, Sunny Balwani, who, it later emerged, had also secretly been her boyfriend the entire time, with massive fraud. That September, Theranos dissolved. In 2022, Elizabeth Holmes was convicted on 4 counts of fraud and sentenced to more than 11 years in prison. Balwani got nearly 13. The youngest self-made female billionaire in the world traded the Forbes cover for a federal prison number. Here is the part the documentaries skip. The fatal mistake was not the lying. The lying was a symptom. The fatal mistake was sequencing. In software, you can sell the dream first and build it later. You ship a minimum viable product. It's a little broken. Users tolerate it. You iterate, and it gets good. Fake it till you make it is practically the Silicon Valley operating system. And for software, it works because the gap between the demo and the reality can usually be closed with more code and more time. But Theranos was not software. It was physics, chemistry, and human biology. And in that world, the technology either works at the molecular level or it does not. No amount of funding, hype, or willpower changes what a single drop of diluted blood can actually tell you. Holmes ran a hardware and biology company using a software company's playbook. She sold the finished product to real patients with real diseases, while the core science was still an open question. And the answer to that question, it turned out, was no. Every other decision flowed downstream from that one inversion. The secrecy existed because the device didn't work. The hidden Siemens machines existed because the device didn't work. The hunting of whistleblowers happened because the device didn't work. There was never a master fraud at the center of Theranos. There was a single broken machine and a $9 billion company built entirely to hide it. So here is the question to ask yourself before you build anything. Is your product the kind of thing where good enough now, great later, is survivable, or the kind of thing that has to be true on day one? A flawed app costs someone a frustrating afternoon. A flawed blood test costs someone their diagnosis. Know exactly which one you are building, because that single distinction is the line between fake it till you make it being ambition and it being a felony. If you want to see what happens when the product genuinely works, but the math underneath it is the lie, watch our breakdown of MoviePass, the company that sold $10 monthly movie passes while nearly every customer cost them far more than that to keep. It's the same disease wearing a completely different costume. The link is on screen now.